When a doctor tells you after you take this test that you have to wait 12 months to go see a genetics counselor to get an understanding of the report, that
Right.
made me flip. I had enough. And so I fired the
Right.
doctor and I went to and build a team around myself who have data scientists, AI expertise, and we built a large language model around genetics.
The Research Labs podcast by SundayPyjamas.
First of all, I would like to thank you to come on the podcast. And I've been doing a lot of reading on genome sequencing after our first call. And I learned a lot about the story that I think you shared very briefly about your daughter, Maddie. So do you think you can take a moment and give us and the audience like a small brief about who you are, what you do, what is Maddie Bio, just to get started?
Sure. Thanks for the time today. So my name is Gavenraj Sodhi, and I'm the founder and CEO for Maddie Bio, which is short for Maddie BioGenetics. I started this after my daughter, who's 2.5 years old. She had been going through numerous learning difficulties and learning challenges, and we found out that she had a very large gene deletion in her chromosome 2, which is a large deletion that communicates to the neural pathways in the brain going to the central nervous system. So it affects how you speak, how you walk, how you communicate, and how you eat, how you actually move your hands. So every function in your body is associated
Right.
to that part of the brain. And
Right.
so for many, I would say for many months, we had been going with doctors to doctors to doctors, and had seen numerous, I would say, kind of misdiagnosis, or they just missed it as far as her condition.
Right.
And part of the challenges were the lack of understanding of genetics here in this country, and the expense of the cost of genetics in the U.S. is quite high
Right.
compared to other countries.
Right.
And so with that, we decided that we created a company that helped me as a parent understand how and what the gene reports mean, because most of the time they're very human unreadable. We want to make
Right.
them readable, we want to make them understandable so that people
Right.
can take action based on their genetic
Right.
report. And so what we
Right.
created is a model for people to be able to read their genetic reports after testing, as well as our purpose in Maddie Bio is to help find a cure to rare disease by using AI to repurpose the existing drugs on the market or existing drugs and therapies that may be on the market today. So we have a very big task ahead of us, but with the use of AI and just so many great scientists we have on board, and with the support like we're having today with SundayPyjamas, we have the
Right.
opportunity to find a cure. And I really truly believe that.
Right. So I would say the one part which fascinates me about this story is that she is extremely young. She is currently 2.5 years old,
And she's 2.5, yes.
right? And you mentioned that you went through the conventional route where you try to diagnose what was going on with the methods which are already out there in the market. So could you share how that process was? In the sense,
Sure.
how did you as a parent decide what test needs to be done? Do you go to a doctor? And then, when you were not satisfied, how was the process or the thought process was to kind of think that maybe we should look at genetics? Because that does not
Yeah.
sound like a normal thing to do, if you know what I'm saying.
So for us, my wife actually, she felt there was something wrong just during the birth process. And even
Right,
before she was born, she felt something was off. I mean, we have 3 children together. And
right,
so she's definitely an expert being the mom, but also going through
right,
multiple births, that she felt there was something off. But in this country, they don't do very much newborn screening for genetics. In other countries, they
right,
do. There's only about 3 or 4 hospitals that in this country do this. But we didn't have newborn screening, but we had other screenings which did not find any issues. But when she was born, we noticed some facial differences, but more
right,
so on how she vocalized her crying, her different patterns, the way she moved her hands and feet. So there were definitely there were definitely indications that there were differences from her from the other kids. And
Right.
so we went through the doctor. We said, what's going on? Until one day, I was sitting at my desk on a morning call, and she started having a seizure. She just
Right.
collapsed. Her eyes were rolling. You can see the white part of the eyes just rolling and just convulsing really rapidly. And we didn't know what's going on. I've never seen a child have a epileptic seizure, and it was scary. So we
Right.
called 911. We went to the ER. We went to the ER several times. This happened probably 6 or 7 times, and her pediatrician never figured out what was the issue until we
Right.
ended up at Children's Hospital in San Antonio, in Texas. And the ER doctor found out that she had a heart murmur, and then she also had a hole in her heart called atrial septal defect, which really we found out affects about 25% of the general population, which is quite high. So you think 25% have a hole in between one of the ventricles inside of the heart. It's amazing.
Right.
It never This part of the heart never closes up. And so in her case, it was quite large. So they could not use a traditional by using like a band effect to kind of band it together. So they had to go in and do open heart surgery. So you can imagine a 14-month-old baby going for 3.5 hours through open heart surgery on a tiny body, how
Right.
frightening it was. And it was really scary. And I said, we have to do some other tests to figure out. So I went and did some homework, found some doctors, and we went to a geneticist finally. And he said we have to do a coronal microarray, which was our first test called CMA.
Right.
And we found out she had about 130 plus genes missing, but no further analysis from there. And then we did a whole exome sequencing. And remember, each of these tests take between 4 to 6 weeks or even 8 weeks to actually get the results back. So there's a lot of
Right.
time that's going by. And then
Right.
the whole exome sequencing, we find out that we find a little bit more detail, and we found the 65 genes that are deleted. So, but that's not the diagnosis. Yet many of the doctors say that's the diagnosis. So I had a big differing of opinion what this diagnosis is. And I had a right. I was studying genetics. I was educating myself deeply into her situation. And when a doctor tells you after you take this test that you have to wait 12 months to go see a genetics counselor to get an understanding of the report, that
Right.
made me flip. And I had enough. And so I fired the
Right.
doctor, and I went to and built a team around myself, who have data scientists, AI expertise, and we built a large language model around genetics using the
Right.
ChatGPT platform. And we so far today, I think we have about 4 million plus journal articles and other types of reports that make up this large language model. And we
Right.
also have test reports from Maddie, as well as about 9,000 anonymized other patients now that make up
Right.
this report. But the purpose we built this system was because I wanted to understand her condition. And so the more I understood from all these articles, the more current I was with technology, the more doctors were weary that I knew too much information that they did not. And so
Right.
that was a point I said it's time for us to take charge and do something about this. So I then started my venture focusing on making testing available and accessible to any family, irregardless of cost, irregardless of insurance. So cost should not be an issue. And then if you have a situation, the diagnosis gives the doctor the capability to have deeper insights as far as your condition because they can get the report directly with the consent of the patient. So the doctor
Right.
using the AI has much more deeper information so they can be more preventative than reactive in the situation.
Right.
Whereas in this country, it's all about reaction, what to do after something has happened. By that time,
Right.
it's already too late.
Right. And you mentioned there was a 12-month delay in looking or meeting someone who would actually
They,
explain you what the
they
reports were. Why was
yeah,
there a delay for
they
12
wanted
months?
Yeah, the problem in this country is there's not enough genetic counselors. A genetic counselor is basically a profession that, just like a school counselor that goes to you and
Right,
talks to you about certain, issues you have in school. The same thing as a
right,
genetics counselor explains to you the issues that are according to your genetic profile. And so their education is based on understanding the effects of genetics onto the human body and how to explain
right,
that in layman's terms in a better way to the patients. But the
right,
problem in this country is there's not enough of them. And so it's a fairly new profession. And I
right,
would say probably 15 years, then there's still not enough of these professionals in the market today in the US. And so what has happened is doctors tell you you have to wait 12 months because that's how long it takes to get this on the schedule of one of these genetic
wow,
counselors. Now the difference is, if you're
right,
a person like myself that feels that, I need to save my daughter's life, there's no other way. I've got to break down every single wall to achieve this challenge. I will do
right,
whatever. And that's what happened. I built a system, educated myself, and demanded from the doctor that I get visibility with a genetics counselor as soon as possible. He saw I had learned so much information. So he said, okay, I'll try to get you in within a month. So within 3 weeks,
wow,
we had an appointment
right,
with a genetics counselor. And thankfully now they're also part of our scientific council, part of our organization, the Maddie Bio,
right,
because they believe that there is a challenge in this market. There's an opportunity to fix these issues in this country.
right. And what was the perspective of, let's say, the counselor versus the kind of results you were getting from your system? Like, is there a coherence in both those uh, analysis?
Yeah.
Right.
There was direct intersection between what we found and what the genetics counselor had, and especially
Right,
a number of the reports that we had found, because this disease is quite rare. There's about 50 or so that are are found according to the current scientific methods of this
right,
disease or these set of diseases, that we had basically uncovered very similar or exactly the same reports that the genetics counselor had.
right. And are these reports very mathematical in nature, in the sense you have to know what you are trying to find in them? Like, if without proper training, you will not be able to figure, like, are they obvious or they are very difficult to uncover?
No, no, very. I mean, they're PhD, postdoc
Right,
published reports, so
right,
they are quite medically in nature. But if
right,
you know what you're looking for, you can search. Like, you'd have to know, what gene deletion you're looking at, or which structural variant is
right,
are you trying to look at and compare. Those,
right,
what chromosome is affected. Those are the things you can start with and do the search.
right,
But one thing to note I wanted to mention is, because there might be only 50, actually there might be more. But what happens is, if you look at it from a top-down umbrella approach at disease, you'd think if there's 6 different symptoms that are very similar, they may be bunched together, and so you get misdiagnosis. You often
right,
miss this disease because it may be discussed as some other disease. But if you look at
right,
the underneath of the cells, what we call system
right,
biology, which is coming today,
right,
you uncover that there's so much more information that separates this type of disease from, or this type of cell with this symptom and this biomarker, from this type of cell exhibiting this symptom and biomarker. The symptoms may be quite similar, but the cells are going to be maybe different. So having an look under the cover, or like just say having a look at the motor underneath the hood, gives you a lot more information than looking from the hood down.
I would say there are two parts which are forming in my mind after listening to the process that you went through. The first part was before the company got started, when you were, I would say, going through as much information as you possibly could, humanly possible. Have you worked with biology and medicine before? And if not, how did you start and organize this entire process? How were
Great
you
question.
going through so much information?
For me, I'm a chemical engineer by trade. So my job is
Right,
to know how to problem solve. And
right,
I think I have two gifts that God has given me. My first gift
right,
is I can visualize problems. So I understand if I can
right,
understand a problem, I kind of visualize interactions that occur about that problem and what kind of solutions we may consider. My other gift is I really my gift of networking with people, understanding
Right.
people, finding people, feeling people's energy as far as the connection between the problem we're trying to solve and maybe some of their
Right.
experiences they may have in the past. And so
Right.
I bring this together. It's like how I created my team was because one, I have to expose the problem I have. So I have to be vulnerable to my issue, right? Most parents, most professionals will say, how can you be so transparent about your daughter's situation?
Right.
I mean, if I'm not transparent, how do I get help for my daughter? It's impossible. If I don't get help, there's not enough people that know what the solution, cure, or cause or resolution to her issues may be. So
Right.
my purpose in life is to raise that voice, get that voice out there, find the people who care about this, who can connect to this. It's not everybody,
Right.
then it's okay. It's the same way I look at investors. If I go for investors, I mean, most either some of the investors will think I'm crazy, or some of the investors think this problem is way too big, I can't solve it, and some of our investors are saying, "Wow, I can really connect and empathize with what you're going through because I either have had a situation similar, or I know people who are similar in your situation, or I really feel that you can break through these walls with the right people." And
Right.
I have empirical evidence. I have people on our team that are, mitochondria experts, microbiologists, geneticists, doctors, neurologists, cardiologists, pulmonologists. I have all of them
Right.
on board. I've been bootstrapping this from day one. So it's not like,
Right.
you know, I didn't pay them any money to come on board and say, hey, I'm begging you, please help me. It's like they came on board because they felt there was a way we can work together and collaborate and really have a high probability to achieve a cure out of this. Because once we come up with a cure for this particular test, what we call a lab assay, which is in this case, we're going after Rett syndrome, which is affecting girls first. So we're developing an assay for Rett syndrome, and we're working backwards as far as what that drug can do, how the drug can help, and seeing if that can potentially help Maddie's situation. So that's why having a diverse set of people support on the team, as well as on scientific councils from universities and hospitals, clinics, pharmaceuticals, having them on board, those that believe are those that are putting, help push this forward.
When you mention these are the diverse set of people that are working together, the obvious thing to think through is that when you are, let's say, getting diverse perspectives and opinions about a particular solution or a problem, how do you internally go about decision making as to what input to take to solve exactly what problem? Like, how does the decision making operate when you have people from such diverse backgrounds? Because I'm presuming
Yeah.
that not everything just aligns in the first go. So do you guys have like a back and forth, or is there a collaboration mechanism? Like, how does that work?
So we have let's see, we have a biologist, a team of biologists, various biologists. We
Right.
have a team of infrastructure specialists that deal with AI, data science, and overall cloud infrastructure. And we have a team
Right.
of interns. The interns work
Right.
with both the infrastructure and the biologists, but the biologists have different diverse backgrounds, and you have to respect each and every each and every part of their expertise because each of them have 10 to 20 years of experience in what they do. And
Right.
so I think just as an I think about it as like in a hospital. You have a
Right.
surgeon, you have a nurse, you have
Right.
many people in an operating room. How do they coordinate
Right.
and cooperate and work together in such a way that they save the lives of these patients? It's the same
Right.
way we got to surgically build our operation room, which is our company, our team,
Right.
and we meet on a
Right.
regular basis. We meet every Wednesday night for our team meeting. We meet regularly for our operational and engineering meetings. But we have to
Right.
operate just like a hospital does surgically in an operational room.
Right. Right. Did this culture of collaboration built as a result of the kind of people you are bringing on the team, like the kind of feel for the mission, and hence it's slightly easier to respect each other's perspective? Or was there like a conversation about it?
No, I mean, after some time, I mean, this is my third company I built.
Right.
my third startup. And so after a couple of these journeys I've gone through, you start
Right.
learning how to interact with people as we go.
Right.
So it took a little bit of time to get up to speed as far as what kind of people we're looking for. And then I go out and I search, or I go to different events, and then I find people. And then there's certain people are very interested. There's certain people that
Right.
express interest, but then they kind of fall off. And then there's certain people you just don't want on a team. It's just
Right.
fact. Chemistry
Right.
chemistry on a team is very, very important. To make sure you have the
Right.
right chemistry is the most incredible important. It's more important than money itself, because if you
Right.
have the wrong chemistry, that can destroy everything. One person can disrupt everything else. So you got to be very careful as far as who you bring on board. It's not just about title, role. It's about experience. It's about energy. It's about maturity. It's about hunger. It's about what do they want to get out of this? Because you got to think about what's in it for them. So you got to make sure you address what's in it for them before you address what's in it for you.
How do you balance that personally? Because your motivation is very clear. And so how do you kind of balance the professional side of things? And let's say, because I was just thinking that, let's say your daughter is so young and she's 2.5 right now. And I think this happened, you started this last year. So there was a process where you were
Hmm.
trying to educate yourself first and then go out there to get things done. So do you
Hmm.
feel that there is a timeline that you are trying to meet because of the severity of the condition? And how do you kind of negotiate with yourself when you're trying to explain someone who might not get it as much why this is so important?
I think that, so for me, when I explain, first I understand the person's position and if it's going to be
Right.
interesting for us. Second
Right.
is I then go and explain why I started this, what it is, why I started it, and I can immediately see within the first few seconds if there's a connection.
Right.
If there's a
Right.
connection, I keep going. If there's not, I just walk away.
Right. Okay.
Purely, I just walk away. I don't waste time. I don't waste my time. I don't waste their time.
That makes sense. Has it been difficult to make decisions from a company standpoint when the outcome of this kind of a mission is so personal and so big? How do you kind of balance that? Because forming a company, forming a team, building a product, these are very time consuming things. So how do you kind of make sense of it in your head?
I, I,
Like,
I
do you
wake.
feel
I
you're running
wake.
out of time, kind of a thing?
No, it's not that. It's like, how do I? It's the question I ask myself every day. How am I going to extend my runway? I'm sure everybody
Right.
asks this kind of question, and it's not. This is a very personal journey, like you said. So it's not like
Right.
the only runway if that runs out is if something happens to my daughter. That's but that
Right.
doesn't mean my project, our project ends. It does not. But
Right.
my timeline is, my personal mental timeline is, where's my daughter as far as her situation, and then we try to do our best to have some alignment with the science behind what we're building. But one cannot control the science because we're not God. We are soldiers on a mission to find a cure to help reduce the impact of all these medicines that may not be suitable or well suited for her, even though they contain her conditions, because we know they're doing other damage. So, how do we best develop something that can help alleviate those other effects while also cutting back on our meds, but eventually sorting out her cells that we can regenerate those and apply some gene therapy down the road? That's kind of how we look at it. So there's multiple stages, and that's true for any disease. That's true for cancer. That's true for diabetes. It's true for a variety of different diseases that are getting stem cell therapy using the biomarkers to communicate to the cells to regenerate individual cells rather than giving chemo. That was a traditional
Right.
mean. You would then attack each cell and regenerate them and recreate them so then you can re-inject them into the body to then ignite regeneration across other cells in the body to remove that disease. That's kind of the that's kind of where we want to go eventually. Whether we do it in our lifetime or next, that's irrelevant. The opportunity and the capability exists right now to be able to accomplish just that. It's being done in other disease areas. What I believe is for us in rare disease, we are doing it in rare disease, starting with Rett syndrome. But that does not mean that it's all about the data. If you have more data, the more accuracy you can have, the more specific disease you can tackle based on that data. The sort of more data you have around specific disease, the more ability you have to go tackle the disease across this platform. So we start with one disease that has certain set of drugs either on the market today that are FDA approved or are in some stage of clinical trial. But then it does that once you have that, you can you can develop other types of routines on the same platform for other diseases. That's definitely very possible.
Right. So on your website, you have mentioned there is a testing kit. Could you share more about how that works?
So we created a whole genome sequencing testing kit, which you can do at home. You basically get two
Right.
swabs and a kit that you take out of your box, and you basically apply the swabs in your cheeks, each side 60 seconds. And you take the test and you ship it back to us, and we get it sequenced, and we get you a report within 4 to 6 weeks, or slightly longer sometimes, depending on demand. And this is done for under $1,000 US dollars, and this
Right.
includes access to a post follow up with a genetics counselor that helps interpret the results to you so you better
Right.
understand it. We also give you a dashboard, and this dashboard gives you a set of cards, and these cards explain to you your different dispositions you may have. You may be completely, healthy, and give you some, basic nutrition updates every month based on what based on your genetic profile. You might have certain things you might not want to eat or don't like to eat. Like I don't like cilantro because there's a certain cell in my body that says Gavenraj is not meant to eat cilantro. So that is
Wow.
part of my body. I can't change that.
Right.
So, and everybody has something of that sort. Some people are lactose intolerant. Some people don't like
Right.
spicy food. It's not because they can't eat it; it's because their body just doesn't tolerate it. And so, because certain cells exhibit that, and so everybody's body is unique and different. And so we that's why we created a whole genome sequencing test, so you don't have to wait for insurance to decline you because it's too expensive. It's in this country it's between $8,000 and $15,000, so it's crazy expensive, and
Right.
it's unaffordable at most. So, and you have to wait for the doctors to come back to you about reports and interpretation. We want to provide an
Right.
all-in-one solution, which then you can, with the consent of yourself, you can share your details with your doctor, and your doctor has immediate insights as far as your condition. So you get a complete solution at your home, and so that's what we want. We want to make it more affordable and accessible to all the different communities that don't have access to genetic testing or just are not deaf, maybe lack the education or knowledge,
Right.
and they need a kind of helping hand to get them to take these tests, because in the end, it's going to help them become better decision makers about their own health.
So if the other test cost around $15,000, how are you guys doing it for less than 1,000? So how does that work?
Yeah. So and that price goes down by volume. So I mean, every you can see there's a lot of greed built into the numbers that are being sold in this country. The same test in China and
Right.
India costs $250.
Right.
So it's you can see there's a big gap in as far as the test is the same, yet
Right.
the salaries, the margins are quite high in this country, and it's just there's a lot of people putting this money in their pocketbooks because they can make a lot of money. In this country, there's about 3 to 4 million people. I believe last 2 years, I've had whole genome sequencing tests. So there's a huge market for people to take these
Right.
tests.
And so how many patients slash customers do you guys serve right now on a monthly or a yearly basis
We're just
for the
we're
test?
just we're just we yeah we're just early stage. We're launching into production. We
Right.
are at this stage working with a few clinics to line up our referral process, but also we're working with a couple of urgent care centers here in Southern California to go to
Right.
market with, to launch with their ecosystem. So
Right.
we are also looking at a direct consumer approach. So right now we're at the stage where We are just readying our production process online. We're doing this in collaboration with University of California, San Diego. They've been a great supporter of Maddie Bio, and we're part of the Center of Novel Therapeutics there. So we are using the UC platform as a way to support the novel research that we're doing, as well as other sequencing partners to bring this to market with. So we are launching very, very soon. And you can go to maddiebio.com for more information on that and sign up.
You also mentioned you are bootstrapping the entire operation.
We're
How
bootstrapping right
does
now, yes.
so how does bootstrapping work in a biotech company? Because whatever I understand from biotech is that it takes time, it takes a lot of capital and people for the research, for the trials, for clinical trials, and it's a very difficult thing to pull off. So how are you managing the bootstrapping aspect of things, and how are you going about this?
Yeah, so I mean, that's completely true. I
Right,
mean, if you, the clinical trial side of it is if you're bringing a drug to market, which is much later
right,
stage, if we decide that we can't repurpose existing drugs, but we have to go create
right,
a new drug, that's something we will
right,
consider, much further down the road. But for the moment
right,
now, like I said, we are bootstrapping with people that believe in our mission and what we're doing, trying to, working to bring the market in this stage. And so we have a
right,
lot of experienced people that, are giving their time.
right,
Some have other part-time, jobs at nonprofits or otherwise, but, many are full-time, focusing
right,
night and day as far as, bringing our models to market, finding, doing customer market fits. We're looking at strategic partnerships that we are lining up with so we can provide value in areas where are complementary with partners that are doing, similar lines of business, but we can add
right,
certain value, and that gives us, a cash stream coming in. So there
right,
are there are ways you can go about non-diluted funding without diluting your
right,
company and being bootstrapped.
right,
So that's you want to get your product and your story and talking to enough people out there that you can have the opportunity to go out and build these strategic partnerships. So it takes time because you don't from day one your product changes. It changes all the time.
right,
You have to make pivots when there's big decisions to be made, and
right,
those pivots might you make them based on conversations you have in the market as far as, hey, can can my team cooperate with yours in this area, but never lose sight of what your end goal is. So if your end goal is
right,
to target a cure for a rare disease, well, there are other ways to navigate to get to the end goal. It's not necessarily a straight road. There's going to be a lot of circles and ups and downs and so forth. But key is to figure out how do you get as much non-diluted funding or support,
right,
and then
right,
if you have to get diluted, getting diluted by people that believe in what your mission is. It's not just about money; it's about their support, their experience, and their knowledge, what they can bring to the table, because that's how you move forward. It's not just about money. Having money and having experience and having a network is a complete win because it helps you propel forward, and that's where you need to go. Propel forward as far as possible with what you have, and continue iterating on that.
So I would say there are many different aspects of what you're doing. There is a product that you guys are building, the kit. There is a software platform where patients can upload the reports and get more insights using your language model. Then there are partnerships, and I think you are beginning to also put the word out there, like like we are doing something similar right now. So I would say it's a lot of diverse things that you are engaging in on a very regular basis. How do you manage all of this for yourself and to make sure that everyone is on the same page as to where you are heading? Like how
So
does
we
the
use we use
operations
we
or a
use
day look like?
Yeah, so we have communication is key.
Right,
Communication is very, very important. Sometimes people, many people just don't communicate openly. Like scientists may be more closed in. They tend to not as much. They want to focus on their research and they don't
right,
necessarily like to communicate all the time. That's just every personality is different. So
right,
you're trying to find a balance. And so we
right,
use tools. You have to keep you as a CEO, as a founder, your job is also
right,
to be a leader. Your job is also to
right,
mentor them. Your job is also to be a teacher.
right,
To not only teach, but also listen. And so a coachable CEO is able to coach his team. An uncoachable CEO destroys his team. So it's important for me to listen to them. What's the issues? How to create a constructive work environment that, we maybe meet in the office 2 to 3 times a week. If some people are remote, some people are local, so we can't do everything with everybody on site. So we have to have a balance between using collaborative tools like Slack. We use email. Slack is probably our biggest solution that we use. We have partnerships with like Microsoft, Nvidia, and others that allows us to benefit from these tools, to use these tools because a lot of these things are credited to startups to use, so we don't have to have
Right.
out of pocket payments. So you got to do your
Right.
research as far as how to reduce your spend, but also have ability to use these tools so you can build this collaborative environment and to build a team from that. So it's those are all skills because and you have to like I have lots of follow ups, lots of calls. How do you
Right.
prioritize them? How do you use your calendar effectively? Where do you put your notes? How do you manage that information in your mind and put it on paper and do follows? It's a big exercise.
It's a lot of work, it seems. It's a lot of work.
A lot of work. A lot of work.
Work.
It's key to keep your brain. It's key to keep your brain clear.
Right.
I love to swim. I love to just take walks and just sometimes clear my mind. And
Right.
that's really important. I listen to you know some Gurbani and some relaxing music. It really helps me to kind of be clear because if I'm not clear, I can't act clearly and I can't communicate clearly, and then my team gets these mixed messages, and I can't allow that to happen.
You mentioned you're training an entire model using the ChatGPT APIs. How does that work? Is it very compute heavy? Does it take a lot of resources?
It takes compute resources, but it also takes, I think, experience in how continued experience how to improve on what's improving every day. Because you're
Right.
building on something that's changing daily, right? You're building
Right.
on something that's always improving. It's not just staying stagnant, right? You
Right.
also have to consider all these other models like Gemini and Hugging Face and just there's so many there's OpenAI, there's so many other large language models that you have to figure out what's working best and what's not. And you take the best of breed of these pieces and you build a modular capability for our large language model and something that doesn't hallucinate, something that has a good, effective scoring mechanism, something that has good defined guidelines that doesn't evade beyond the genetic space. That it's medically related, it's genetics oriented. It's not going to discuss other types of information that are not core to what we're talking about here. So we offer an what we call Ask Maddie service, which is your AI coach. So each patient gets their AI coach called Ask Maddie, specific to their diagnosis and their analysis, and they can ask questions. So it's their AI coach which gets more intelligent. So we have to be able to connect to new data sources all the time, understand and become more aware of what new data sources become regularly updated because genetics new genetics findings from the government happen yearly, so those databases get updated yearly. Other databases get updated on a different basis, whether you're talking to NIH or NSF or PubMed or other types of locations, but you have to be aware of how to stay current.
I see. I would say that was very nice.
Thank
I
you
think
for the
we
opportunity. I
covered
mean,
we yeah, I think we covered quite a lot of things.
yeah, I just asked that, it's if there's other folks that have rare diseases out there or diseases that they're just not they're unsure of. Key is to talk about it, to ask questions, and even if it's mental health or physical health or other cases, please reach out to people in the community, reach out to folks at Sunday Pajamas and say, I heard this a podcast, and you have questions, don't be shy. If you're shy, the message can never get out, right? So how
Yeah.
do you find a solution? And we know at least in my Indian community, people tend to not say anything. And
Yeah.
our job is to get people, especially the minority populations, speak out, because
Yeah.
we're here to help.
We had a similar episode. We had this gentleman by the name Arun, and he's the founder of this company called Menda Health. And they have built a
Oh,
platform. They provide non-opioid therapies for people who are suffering from chronic pain.
oh, very
So,
good.
right, right.
Yeah, that's because
And
we have these patient cohorts, and
right,
if they're facing these chronic pains, or but
right,
you may not know the true diagnosis of those chronic pains. It comes down to the
exactly.
cells, because those pains can be severe. I mean, horrible,
Right,
horrible pain.
right,
It just never goes
right,
away. Even when you're sleeping, you feel the pain,
right,
right? So unless you
right.
get to the genetic level of that understanding, that you can't really solve it by just giving drugs, because
Yeah.
your body builds tolerance for those drugs over time.
Could you share, how your experience was talking to us?
I think actually I appreciate your support for bringing entrepreneurs like us, giving us a voice to your audience.